Ken Meyer Jr., known for Dark Ritual from Tempest, Urnum Jin, Formation, a card that probably only I've ever put into a deck, Guardian Beast, Abu Jafar. I mean, the list goes on. And you know, if you're an EDH player, Mystic Remora. If you're an old school player, Kurt Ape. You've got a lot of really great playable Magic cards. But man, your art's some of the most iconic in the game. Urnum Jin was a card that like I fell in love with as soon as I first saw it.
Yeah, well, that's saying a lot because there are obviously hundreds of incredible artists starting from the beginning, but especially now because the quality started at a certain level and it just kept going up and up and up. Now, obviously, the best artists, fantasy artists in the world, want to work for Magic, so that's what you get in the game. Some of the best artists available.
Yeah, it's wild how much that's evolved in the last 30 years. The not just the art, but like the industry, you know.
Yeah, I remember when Magic really became popular. As how were you around like 94, 95 playing
I
then?
was around. I came in at Ice Age, so around Chronicles era. I have white and black border Urnum Jins.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say was obviously there were so many games that came out because of Magic, and
Yes.
most of us worked on most of those games, so we all got really busy. And sometimes the work suffered here and there because you don't want to turn down work because you don't know when you're going to get work again as a freelancer. So almost all of us worked on like Middle Earth, Shadowfish, Legend of the Five Rings. There was one called Redemption and Magica, Middle Earth. I think I already said that.
Warlord,
There are
Overpower. I'm trying to think of other games from that era.
there are other games that I didn't work on, but those are the ones that just off the top of my head. Dune, I worked on all of them.
Awesome. Well, how did you get involved with Matt? Well, actually, before I ask that, what were you doing before Magic the Gathering?
Um, well, I might be a little different from some of the early artists because uh, I had I had a career as an illustrator before Magic. I mean, Magic, the first ones I did might have been like '93, and I had been working as an artist since college, but especially after college, as a freelancer working after hours in the beginning, after my other job. And that started in like probably 1980, 81. So I had 15 almost years of working just as an artist in other areas. I worked in ad agencies, I worked in online companies and like educational media. I worked at a couple gaming companies, like video games. I worked at Midway Games for a bit. I worked at Sony Online for a bit on EverQuest. And I had several military contract jobs in a row that I can talk about, one of them mainly specifically, but I worked at Top Gun for a while in San Diego. So I had a whole lot of other stuff either going on before or concurrent with Magic because Magic was just a freelance job, a freelance gig. I even spelled the name wrong in the beginning. Why I would? No one would believe you could spell Wizards wrong, but it was because I was really into the fanzines of the late 60s and 70s as an artist and a reader of comic fanzines. And there was one called Wizard with a WH. So for some stupid reason, that's the way I thought of it. But the main fantasy type work, I mean, I did comic book work because that's how I started to draw. That's how I learned to draw, was from comics. But then I realized I wasn't really fit for comics as I thought I would have been. And I fell into doing different kinds of illustration, and I did some illustration for a couple different companies that had games in book form, mainly White Wolf. And there was one company before White Wolf called Maker Games, which is the first artwork I ever did. I think it was for a werewolf game called Lycanthropes. The art director there, I think, either directed me or maybe went to work at White Wolf for a while. So then I started doing White Wolf work around 1992. I mean, technically, I'm still doing work for White Wolf. It's changed names. It's just companies that they're covering the same stuff, the same world. So I did a ton of black and white watercolor work and some covers for White Wolf. And then Richard Thomas, who was an artist at White Wolf and an art director, started doing work for Magic. And I think it was him that showed my work and maybe someone like Jeff Lobenstein, who also did Wolf work, to Jesper Meerfors, who was the main art director there. And that's how I got into magic, was probably because of Richard. So I really owe Richard a huge debt, because it's really crazy. I mean, really, the last painting I did for Wizards was in 1999. I think this card called Penniless Trapper. I mean, I would like to keep working for Wizards, but they're really hard to get back into, like, because, like I said, everybody wants to work there. So there's a ton of competition. But what I was going to say is, I'm really fortunate, and it's amazing that those small amount of cards, like 15 cards total, have enabled me to keep making a living, whether it's doing commissions for people, doing all these events. It's become probably at least half of my income doing these events. I do a lot of those. And then a lot of commissions come about because of the events or because of social media showing other commissions that I did for people. So it's really incredible. I owe a lot to Richard and Jesper and Magic in general.
Awesome. Do you have any fun stories from the early days of Magic?
Well, I don't think I have those kind of stories as much as some of the other artists, because a lot of the original artists were all in that Seattle area. So a lot of them already knew each other or would know each other. But when I did my first magic work, 1994, I think by that time I was in San Diego. For a little while I was in a little studio of artists, but they were comic book artists. So I didn't really have any interaction. I didn't know about events. I don't know how many events were going on that early at that time. So I didn't really have a ton of interaction, definitely not any personal interaction with any magic artists or players. I never really even learned to play the game, which is pretty sad. But I figured that my extracurricular activities had already sort of been set and took a certain amount of time, and I didn't have the time, and I didn't have enough desire to make the time to learn the game. It would have been useful in a lot of ways, and I know it's supposed to be a lot of fun, but I just never got around to doing it, I guess.
So I guess do you have anything? I mean, obviously you've got the Guardian Beast in the background there, which is one of the all-time greats from
Yeah, this is
Arabian Nights.
one of several large repaintings that I've done
Yeah.
over the years. This is about maybe four by 3 or something like that, and then this one is Mora.
Oh, Mystic Remora. Wow.
And these were done just sort of on spec, I guess you'd say, just for myself to maybe sell later. And they just happen to still be around because no one's got them, because they're kind of big, obviously, so they're kind of more expensive. And I've got, other paintings hanging all around the house of different things. None of them magical there. They're all kind of family stuff, some musicians, some fantasy things, some abstract things. They're all hanging around this small apartment that I have right now.
So you stopped in 99. What did you do after Magic?
Well, I just I just basically kept on doing the same stuff I've been doing. At that time, I was working for Sony. That was the day job, doing digital artwork for EverQuest. And then after that, I lost the job for bogus reasons, and it was a pretty mercenary business anyway. So then I had one really stupid, shitty little job that it wasn't even an art job for a short time, and then I just by necessity just started working freelance, period. So after that, it was just a lot of freelance work. I mean, I've done so many different kinds of things over the years. I've done like book covers and magazine work, and a lot of online work and all these commissions I mentioned, and the continuing work with White Wolf and the other companies that work with them and all their other games and stuff. So yeah, that's what it's been. It's been total freelance, just across the map. There's some recent thing that I just started again. When I was working at Top Gun and some of the other ones too, one thing the artists might do is something called a call sign. So these pilots would have classes teaching other pilots, and usually they had some slide presentation. And so the first slide might be a slide with their name on it, their nickname, and like a caricature or something, to just have a funny start. And I did a lot of those when I was at those various uh, military jobs. And I wasn't in the military; I was just a contractor.
So something like Maverick or Iceman or something like that would.
I'll show you one.
Yeah, yeah.
I usually give them away to the pilots because I don't really have a use for them. But a couple of them haven't responded for whatever reason. So I guess I do have some sketch stuff here, just not magic sketch stuff. But it's something like this is a good one.
Fish
So this
eye.
guy fish eyes, and most of them now. This is an early one. Most of them now I do the name digitally. Um, 'Cause it's just faster. I have more fonts I can use. Anyway, so I did a bunch of these when I had those jobs, and then that sort of part of my life just organically ended, and that was probably 90, maybe 89, 90 is the last job like that I had. But then all this time passed, and I kept in touch with some of my artist buddies that used to work there, and one of them contacted me, I don't know, maybe 7 months ago. He said, these guys contacted me to do call signs for them because they like what they have, and they actually had one of mine still hanging up there, he told me. But he said, I'm out of practice. I don't think I can give them what they want. And someone else submitted some digital stuff they didn't really like. So then I got in contact with them, and now I'm back to doing like the one I just showed you, or a new one that I'm doing now. So I think I've done 7 or 8 so far, and there's another maybe 2 or 3 in the pipeline, and there'll be more later on. So that's kind of funny that there was this huge gap, and now I'm back to doing that in addition to the various other jobs.
That's one of the interesting things about like doing freelance art is you kind of you develop a style, and you find sort of a niche that you go for, and sometimes you just I landed in weddings for a while. I was doing just shooting weddings constantly, and
Yeah.
then I changed up. I started doing artist portraits for headshots and stuff. You just kind of hit these niches that work out for you, and you kind of I won't say you pigeonhole yourself into them, but it becomes very comfortable to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think it might be, a result of networking. You just meet somebody and they say, you can do this. And, it helps you to get another job. And I guess I've gone here and there in that fashion. Someone will recommend something because I think you either, as a freelance artist, you either hone in on one particular style so that everyone knows what to expect when they get the work, or I mean, I think what I did to some degree is I tried to learn a whole bunch of different things so that I could do various kinds of work. Because, I mean, like I've done some digital design work, although I don't consider myself a designer, really. I mean, it's just fun. I've done caricatures, I've done people's portraits, pet portraits, and a lot of it is just, honestly, a lot of times it is who you know. Not necessarily, I want to know someone in power, but you just happen to know someone who needs this kind of job done, or know someone who needs this kind of job done, and that might spiral into other people who need it, or more work along those lines.
Do you
Sorry, Dr.
have
Pepper time.
what's that?
Dr. Pepper time.
Dr. Pepper time. My uncle's a big Dr. Pepper fan. He likes to mix it with bourbon.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, I need to stop drinking it, but so far I haven't succeeded.
I actually have. This is a weird fun fact. Because my uncle is such a giant Dr. Pepper fan, I found Peeps at the store that were Dr. Pepper flavored,
Oh, really?
and I bought them. I bought them as like hey, I have these now, so they will forever just sit in my larder.
Did you try it?
Yeah, they taste like sugar and Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
So I guess a question I have about your art is when I think about your art, I go specifically to the stuff that kind of has to do with weather. Like even Ernum Jin, there's like a little twister in there, and a lot of your stuff was in Ice Age. Do you think of yourself as like a weather artist, or is that something that just came about from the set?
Well, I don't think of myself as that at all, but what I do tend to be better at is organic subjects rather than, say, architecture or hard science fiction, spaceships, and all that kind of stuff. That's just too much work. So I usually
Too many rules to follow, right?
Yeah, and I usually like organic stuff because a lot of times I like areas of a painting where you can sort of let the paint do what it's going to do. And so you end up with some unexpected results, which can be good. I mean, sometimes obviously they go wrong, but I like using them for the unexpected textures and things that you can get. So a lot of times my favorite part of a painting might not even be the focal point. It might be some area off on the side where the paint's gone and done some interesting shapes and stuff. So it may be, like I say, that it's just easier and more fun for me to do organic things.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, like if we look at some of your magic art, you do now. I will say you do have the Taj Mahal in the background of one.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so when I have to repaint that, it's a pain in the ass. But I've done worse, or it's not worse, but it's just harder. Like I did a custom playmats recently for one of these events I go to, and it was a long shoreline with a whole bunch of buildings and a bridge that like starts in the background, then goes up in the foreground out of the viewer's eye. And so there's various perspective things and a lot of detail, and I've done some things like that in other areas, other pieces and stuff. It's just not my favorite part of any given painting.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, I was actually looking specifically at clairvoyance, and that's this like northern. I don't know if that's like a Northern Lights kind of thing you have going on there, but it's just fascinating to me, like that, like little like purple, the like woman in purple that you have in that's really cool.
That was uh, that was the first published digital thing I ever did, because the girl is digital. It's a photograph that's manipulated in Photoshop with like the simplest tools that were available.
Yeah, early Photoshop. Yeah.
Yeah, early Photoshop. It was like just a smudge tool where I smudged it down and up that way. And all the rest of it is a painting, a watercolor painting. Because as some of the other guys probably already told you, in the beginning, they only had a regular size scanner. So all the artwork was like 5 by 7, maybe 7 by 9. It wasn't very big. Uh, yeah, so I think there was another, I think it was a card game from White Wolf called Rage, maybe. But there was another, it was like one of the few other times where I did some digital work. And I did a couple comic covers for Caliber that had both traditional and digital work combined. But actually, it's recently, I wish I still had it. There's this um, Spanish magic dealer by the name of Filippo, and most of the artists know him because he goes to a lot of events and he buys a lot of original art and a lot of stuff. And so I was at this event in Spain a couple of weeks ago, and he was there, and he bought uh, like the last 4 or 5 repaintings that I had done that were about, I think it was 12 by 16, if I remember right.
Okay.
One of them was a repainting of clairvoyance, which was a little difficult for 2 reasons. One, I had to find the original photo reference for the woman that I had used before, and I think I did find it. And then I had to paint it, but I'd never painted it before, and I had to try to sort of match the card, which was digital, so it's not going to look exactly the same. It mimics it to some degree. And I also did a playmat for an event recently that was sort of based on clairvoyance also, but in their case, in the background, there was a library that's well known in that area, wherever this event was. The woman was, I used the same reference, but she was in like Victorian garb and like hair sort of up in a big bun and stuff. So that was an interesting challenge too that worked out pretty good.
With that piece of knowledge about digital, you might be the first magic artist to use digital in your process.
That may be true because that's pretty early. Let's see, Ice Age, Arabian Nights, Ice Age. Clairvoyance was Ice Age, came after Arabian Nights, right? Yeah. So that would have been maybe, I don't know when Ice Age came out,
95.
95. So I would have probably done it in like 94, 95. Obviously, I could look at it and look at my signature because I date them all. So that's true. Now you mention it. I mean, I don't know all the cards that were around up to that point. Someone else who knows the game better than me might know if there was another digital piece. But now that you mention it, that might be true.
Yeah.
I might have been a pioneer.
Yeah, it's I can't think of anyone that like that's a card that stands out to me because it's so vastly different than so much of the other art for Magic, especially that one particular element. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, and I'm sure someone in the comments will be able to prove me wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what's your favorite Magic card, like Magic art that you've worked on?
It's funny. That's one of those questions. Maybe the other artists told you. That's one of the questions that we get every single
Yeah,
time we're at an event.
of course.
How do you get started with magic? I don't know. I can't think of any of the
I
other
used to be
questions.
a rock journalist, and the one thing I try not to do that, but one of the worst questions you can ask is like, what are your influences?
Yeah, because all those guys, they don't want to be influenced by anybody. I remember when radio it first came out, and everybody says, "Wow, you guys really like Pink Floyd." No, asshole, we're
Yeah.
radio. And then later they say, "Of course we like Pink Floyd." But what was your question? I forgot.
What's your favorite Magic card that you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, when people ask me, I always tell them I don't really have a favorite card. But if I had to say, I usually say Stone Throwing Devils. And had nothing to do with the fact that it was banned. It's just that it's a combination, it's a very organic combination of realism, mainly in the background, and caricature because the devils are really caricatured, goofy creatures. So I sort of like that combination of cards.
So outside of Magic, what's your favorite thing that you've worked on
Well, again, there is no
by
favorite.
piece or just project wise?
There are a couple. I wonder if I have a print of it. There are a couple paintings that I usually refer to as some of my better paintings. One of them is called An Eye for an Eye, and that's actually, I think I have some business cards here that has the image on it. And then you can obviously find it on my website and stuff.
And we'll
Where
have
is it?
those links below.
Oh, there it is.
That's cool.
But this was a project when I went back to school to finish my degree in 2000, and I had a color theory class. And so we had to do a piece with using color theory, and that has complementary colors of violet and yellow. And I also wanted to have a good piece for an upcoming convention, and I wanted to be sort of fantasy based, and I also wanted to have some sort of social commentary because it's basically sort of about 9/11 also. So that one turned out really well, and I've actually repainted that once or twice for people. And there's another one called At Rest, which was a commission for a friend of mine who collects original art, and it's a woman with wings laying on a like a top of a sort of an outcropping, really high mountain top with the sea behind it and below, and sort of she sort of has the same coloration as all the birds around her, and that one turned out really well. I just can't remember if I have a print or anything in the other room of that. But like you say, I guess by the time this airs, you'll have images available of some of these things that will pop up on the screen.
I can definitely do that.
Yeah. And I'm sure there are a lot of others if I actually sat down. I mean, I've done so many paintings over the years. It's so hard to even think that there's a favorite. Those two pop out for those reasons, but there are probably a comic cover here or there that I would say that about, or a portrait maybe of someone that turned out really well. Various images for White Wolf or some of the companies that have taken it over since then. Some things that have turned out really well. So, I mean, I'll show you something. Let me grab something big from the other room. Hold on. And I mean really big. So,
Oh wow,
so let's see. Yeah, you can see that.
nice.
And this isn't necessarily a favorite up above many other things, but the reason I like it, I mean, I was a Hendrix fan, but not a huge Hendrix fan as real Hendrix fans, to be honest. But he's obviously a great touchstone and image. So this painting is actually him and Prince together. And there's a little bit like
Okay,
this was Prince's collar, and he was up in this area with his guitar, one of his guitars here. But he wasn't turning out as well as I wanted him to. The beginning, like his face and Prince, was done in this liquid watercolor that I was experimenting with. And then, like I say, I didn't really like the Prince part. It sat around for a while because I was going to try and finish it, but I just didn't get to the point where I liked what I was doing. So what I did then was I figured I'll just use this canvas. I'll do something totally new. I just painted it over with white acrylic, covered the whole thing. But this watercolor was a bitch. It just kept soaking through so you'd see it, no matter how many layers of paint I put on it. And then I took it in the backyard. All the paint was dry. And I took a pressure hose. I started spraying it, trying to get all the color to leach out. But it never did. It always kept coming back. And I kept spraying and kept spraying. And then what happened was some of the white acrylic started flaking off in certain areas. So you can still see, like this is still white acrylic here, this spot, and these spots are paint that did not flake off, like this stuff here.
Well, it created like a perfect negative space for shadow, right?
Yeah, well, what it did was, it just, as I was doing it, I thought I kind of like the way that looks. When I paint pretty tightly. I put in a lot of detail, and I don't necessarily always like that fact, but that's what I naturally tend to do. But the stuff that I like as a viewer, a lot of times, are the people who paint more loose. There's a comic artist by the name of David Mack, for example, or Bill Sienkiewicz. You know, they have a real expressive, loose style of painting that I really, really love, but I don't do it as well. The reason I like this, I guess, is once I started spraying, and I said I kind of like that. So then I started spraying in other areas to try and purposely get some of the white acrylic off, but still leave some of it. And so then it got to a point, and then I decided to do the flag motif with paint on top of that. So that's the story of that thing.
It's a cool piece.
Thanks.
So I'll share my favorite of the art that I know you for. I love formation. I think that is like one of the coolest. It's a bummer that that card is not really playable, but it's a cool, like it's got the the ostriches, they're going fast. That card tells you exactly what that card does through the art, and I just like it. It really tells a story.
It's so funny. Artwork is seen a lot of times totally different by all kinds of different viewers, and the artist himself, his or him or herself. They see certain things that other people don't see, or they see it as something different than a viewer might. So, for example, a lot of people tell me, I really love Kurt Ape. That ape scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. And I'm thinking, it's just an ape with red eyes. How is it scary? Or Guardian Beast, same thing. It's just, I don't know. I mean, and I wasn't maybe like 11 when I first saw it, which is obviously a big difference. And you're going to feel different about a piece if you create it, because you go all these various steps, and all the knowledge you have of the piece is totally different from what a viewer who maybe just see it for the first time. So, in a roundabout way, I'm getting to it. The Ice Age stuff was done at a time when I was really busy doing all those other games I mentioned. And so I think that work suffered a tiny bit, and maybe it had also something to do with the subject matter. Maybe I didn't get enough of a good enough idea to do as good a job as I would like say Snow Devil, for example. It's incredibly simplistic. And I think I didn't give myself enough time to think through those pieces and work on them longer and do a better job. But the person who sees that as a viewer doesn't know any of that. All they know is what they see. And I've taught some art classes, mainly some abstract techniques called acrylic pouring with people. And a lot of people will do a piece and they're expecting it to look a certain way. And when it doesn't do that, they're disappointed and they think it's a failure. But I always tell them, well, no, don't think about it that way, because the person who's looking at that as a viewer doesn't know any of the history of it. So
Yeah.
all they see is a piece. And you start off on a bad foot if you start off by saying, yeah, that piece, I don't like it. It sucks. I failed. And then maybe it affects the viewer's opinion of it. And actually, I just did the wrong thing by telling you all that about Ice Age. Now that I think about it, but I like to be truthful about this stuff when I can. So it's surprising to me, for example, when you say that you really like Formation, because it was a relatively simple piece that I did find a herd of ostriches to base that on, but it's supposed to be sort of a dinosaur kind of
Yeah,
creature.
it's very Jurassic Park. Like that's I think the thing I really liked about it.
Okay,
Especially when I was a kid. Like this is what 2 years after Jurassic Park came out. You know,
is Jurassic Park that old?
93, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't think it was that old. Man.
Yeah, Jurassic Park, I think, was my first nerddom. When I was
Yeah,
like 5, I wanted to be a paleontologist. So like Jurassic Park, I was like, oh man, dinosaurs, let's do this. So
yeah.
that I think that might be why Formation speaks to me, because it has that, like, you know, raptors in a pack kind of situation going on.
I have another painting that turned out really well. It was done for a class project. We had to do a pseudo cover of Time magazine about how the dinosaurs disappeared or why they disappeared. And so I have this big T-Rex on a planet that's like breaking up and some meteors in the background. It turned out really good. And I don't think I'm naturally that great at dinosaurs as, say, someone like William Stout or someone who is known for being incredibly good and knowledgeable about dinosaurs. I think you have to be knowledgeable enough to be able to pull it off. But that piece turned out really good.
Yeah. All right. So final question I like to ask for any of my artist friends out there that are looking to get started. Do you have any advice for anyone trying to get into the art world?
Well, most artists will probably have the same advice. I obviously can't give you advice about magic because I'm not succeeding. So I wouldn't have much credence in that area. But most people that are trying to get in, most people that have done magic and people asking that question, they probably will tell them, well, they have a website, and on that website you can submit work. And to do that, you obviously need to know enough about the game to know what would be good to submit in the first place. So you submit some really good environment things, and you submit some good creature design kind of things, and maybe you submit some realistic people in clothing kind of things, so they can see those various areas that you're skilled enough in. And that's pretty much also advice for almost any art job you're going to apply for. To get to the point where you're going to apply for these jobs, of course, you have had to spend time learning your craft. So whether you're learning on your own or in school or some kind of school-like setting, there's obviously a lot of good online schools that you can do now to save money and probably time. I think it saves time to learn from someone rather than on your own, and that's a real plus, is that time saving aspect. So, whatever you're going to do, whether it's comics or games or being a graphic designer, whatever, you just got to do a lot of research and put a lot of time into it. My youngest brother, when I think he was around 14 or 15, said, I'm going to be an artist too. And when he couldn't learn it all in 2 weeks, he gave up, you know, and that happens to a lot of people, not necessarily that extreme, but someone might say, when they're in high school, they're working, they're doing a lot of artwork, trying to get better and they're trying to get good enough, and maybe they don't get enough encouragement or they don't get the right chance because obviously a lot of time it's luck. It's a combination of luck and preparation that gets you a job. So you just gotta know the place you're applying to, know what they want, and have the samples that might be directed to whatever it is that they do. Because if you're going to get a job in an animation studio that does like Rugrats kind of stuff or something, you're not going to submit portraits of American presidents in watercolor. You know, obviously you got to direct yourself to
Dude,
do what they do.
my old 2D design professor would say, "Do you like to draw pirates or do you like to draw turtles?" For that commercial, like the Art Institute commercial from back in the day.
Yeah, and nowadays it's both easier and harder because when I was trying to get work initially, like way back in the '80s, obviously there was no internet. Print was still a viable medium. Now there isn't that many opportunities in print for an illustrator. The first work started being taken away by photographers. Next, it was designers, so the illustration work would deplete more and more. And then print just started disappearing. So there's fewer books and magazines to get work in. So you have to figure out what to do. So a lot of people, they might go into some kind of digital work or animation or film, storyboards, whatever you can learn well enough to get into. So it's both good and bad because there are tons of avenues now and places to look for, but there are also, because there are all those avenues, there are even more people that have the ability to apply. So you have even more competition, I think. You really have to be good, and you have to maybe learn how to take rejection not so hard, and don't give up. Like my younger brother, who knows? He might have been great if he would have stuck with it.
It's the same reason I don't play the guitar. It takes too long.
Yeah, exactly. I always wanted to be able to do that because I have like 2,500 CDs. I'm a huge music fan. So there are tons of things out like that I would like to do, but I just know I don't have the time to do the time you need to be good at it.
Well, Ken, this was a blast. I really appreciate having you on and having you answer some of these questions for us.
Hey, you're totally welcome. I'm a blabbermouth and I'm happy to yap whenever anyone needs some yapping done.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, bye bye.